I think the day that I told my mom I was pregnant, she said, oh, you have to stay in bed for 30 days after you give birth. Also means you can't shower for 30 days. And I was like, okay, that's gross. So I was like, I'm married, I can't not shower for 30 days. Because, you know, when my mom was talking to me about everything, she said, okay, the whole point is not to catch wind. So in Vietnamese culture, it's what we call dom ya, which means when you catch wind. So after a lot of back and forth, she said, okay, fine, but you have to have like the heater on full blast and you have to take a really hot shower. And she's like, 3 minutes and then you dry your hair. So, you know, I think she was a little bit flexible in that way, but she would still make me feel guilty. She's like, oh, if your grandmother knew, you know, that you were still showering, you know, she'd be yelling at me, so.
I was reading a book where they did touch a little bit on the Philippines, and that was surprising to me because I hadn't read anything thus far that related to like birth practices in the Philippines. And this was it was specific to Cebu, in the central part of the Philippines. And there, they view the placenta as kind of like the twin soul of the child. And they would bury it under the front steps of the house to keep it close to the home. And I liked the idea of kind of burying it. And I love to plant things, I like to garden, so I kind of mixed those two things and we planted it in the backyard under a tree that my mother-in-law had given us.
So I drank so much ginger tea. I mean, she did this whole thing where she would, you know, slice the ginger and she would roast it, you know, for about a half an hour until it was a little burnt. And she would brew this concoction with, you know, ginger, lemon, and rock sugar for a couple hours, and she would give me a glass almost every hour. You know, she was really careful about making sure that anything I took out of the refrigerator I would have to heat up because, you know, she said if I put something cold in my body that I would sort of slow down the process of healing. Well, I think it's more heat because ginger has those properties, and so it just heats up the body quickly, and so when you're eating it or drinking it, it immediately warms up the body and it sort of strengthens that flow of energy.
And the birth plan did include some postpartum things like having food ready for when I came back from the hospital. And so we had tinola ready for me, and it's just like a chicken-based soup with ginger. It's one of those kinds of dishes where it's very nutritious and it's like one thing all in itself. You have your protein, your vegetables, and it was something that was a comfort food for me and my partner because we grew up with it.
You know, I realized that going on, and if I had, you know, my own grandchildren, that I would want, you know, my future daughter-in-law or my future daughter to, you know, continue the practice. And I could share with them that, you know, it's something that's been going on for many, many generations, that, you know, it's really key in keeping ourselves healthy, keeping our bodies healthy, and keeping our future generations healthy as well. Yeah, I think it was really deep for me, you know, because I did resist it at first. But I think it's because I didn't really understand it.
During the first birth, everything was so unknown. It was my first baby, you know. And going to that, like finding those traditions was really grounding for me. One, because I didn't identify with the other information and the resources out there, as like identifying as like a woman of color, very connected to her culture and her heritage. I didn't really find like the resources out there relevant to me. The family is really my foundation as a person, as somewhere to start. And so I wanted to really give that to both Drew and I during the birthing process and to our children.